Private James Russell never expected to make first contact with an alien species during his graveyard shift at Forward Operating Base Echo 7. The remote outpost on Europa's icy surface was supposed to be nothing more than a quiet assignment: monitor the deep space sensors, maintain the medical supplies, and try not to go stir-crazy from the endless howling of methane storms. That all changed when the proximity alarms went crazy at 0300 hours station time. Unknown contact, bearing 270, the automated system announced with clinical detachment. Mass signature exceeds known parameters. Russell grabbed his emergency medical kit and environmental suit, more out of habit than any real expectation of needing them. In his 3 years as a combat medic, he'd learned that false alarms were common in the outer solar system. Usually just ice fragments or sensor ghosts. This was different. The creature that crashed through Europa's thin atmosphere was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Its serpentine body stretched nearly 100 meters, covered in scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Crystalline structures that might have been wings trailed behind it, fractured and clearly damaged. But most remarkable were its eyes, deep pools of swirling purple energy that spoke of intelligence far beyond terrestrial understanding. It was, for lack of a better word, a dragon. A cosmic dragon bleeding streams of luminescent plasma from multiple wounds. "This is definitely not in the first contact protocols," Russell muttered, checking his suit's seals before stepping out into the -160°C night. The dragon had carved a massive trench in the ice during its landing, steam rising where its superheated body met Europa's frozen surface. Russell approached slowly, medical scanner already gathering data. The creature's biology was impossible, some hybrid of organic matter and what appeared to be living crystal. Its wounds pulsed with energy that made his instruments go haywire. "Easy there, big fellow," he called out, knowing his suit's external speakers were probably inadequate for communicating with a cosmic entity. "I'm here to help." The dragon's massive head turned toward him, those purple eyes focusing with laser intensity. Russell felt a presence brush against his mind, not exactly telepathy, but something deeper, more primal. Images flashed through his consciousness: a great war among the stars, ancient beings of crystal and light, a terrible betrayal, and an endless pursuit through the dark spaces between galaxies. "Well," Russell said, pulling out his advanced medical synthesizer, "let's start with stopping that bleeding, and then we can worry about interstellar politics." The dragon made a sound like stellar wind through crystal caves, something between a laugh and a song. It lowered its massive head, allowing Russell to approach closer. The medic began applying emergency stabilization fields to the worst of the wounds, his synthesizer reconfiguring itself to handle the unique biological structure. "You know," Russell continued, working steadily despite the surreal situation, "when I joined the Solar Defense Force, I thought the strangest thing I'd have to deal with would be space flu. Shows what I know." Hours passed as Russell worked, the dragon remaining perfectly still except for the occasional twitch when he hit a particularly sensitive spot. By the time the first hints of Jovian light began to illuminate Europa's surface, the worst of the injuries were stabilized. The dragon raised its head, those purple eyes studying Russell with an intensity that made his spine tingle. Another wave of images washed through his mind: gratitude, warning, and urgent purpose. Something was coming, something that had been chasing this magnificent being across the cosmos. Before Russell could process the implications, the dragon's crystalline wings began to repair themselves, shards flowing like liquid back into place. With a motion that defied physics, it launched itself skyward, its massive body somehow graceful despite its size. Russell watched it vanish into Europa's thin atmosphere, knowing with certainty that this was just the beginning. He triggered his comm unit. "Base Command, this is Private Russell. You're going to want to sit down for this report." As if in answer, his deep space sensors began screaming alerts. Multiple contacts had just appeared at the edge of the solar system, an armada of ships unlike anything in human records. The dragon's pursuers had arrived, and humanity was about to be caught in the middle of a conflict that had been raging since before Earth formed. Russell looked at his medical synthesizer, still configured with the dragon's unique biological data, and made a decision that would change the course of human history. Base command, belay that last transmission. We have incoming bogies, and I think I just accidentally involved humanity in a war that's older than our species. Also, I'm going to need a lot more medical supplies. The first ships would reach Europa in less than 6 hours. Humanity's first real war among the stars was about to begin, all because one combat medic couldn't ignore an injured being in need of help. But as Russell hurried back to prepare his base for what was coming, he couldn't bring himself to regret his decision. Some things were worth fighting for, even if they came in the form of impossible crystal dragons from beyond the stars. The approaching fleet appeared in Europa's sky like a constellation of metallic stars. Private Russell watched from the command center as Commander Olivia Blackwood, recently arrived from Earth Command, paced the room. Her dark uniform bore the newly created Interstellar Defense Initiative insignia, a symbol that hadn't existed 24 hours ago. "Let me get this straight," Blackwood said, her voice tight with controlled tension. "You performed unauthorized medical procedures on an unknown cosmic entity, and now we have an alien armada at our doorstep?" Russell stood at attention, though his eyes kept drifting to the tactical display. The alien ships had arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern that somehow hurt to look at directly. "Yes, ma'am. Though in my defense, the Hippocratic Oath doesn't have a species clause." Before Blackwood could respond, the command center's screens flickered. A figure materialized in their main display, tall, ethereal, with skin like polished platinum and eyes that seemed to contain spinning galaxies. The alien spoke, its voice resonating through the station speakers in perfectly accented English. "I am High Executor Xylith of the Crystalline Concordat. You harbor a fugitive of the highest order. Surrender the Star Weaver, or face immediate termination." Russell felt his throat go dry. "Star Weaver? The dragon," Blackwood muttered. "They're calling it a Star Weaver." She straightened her uniform and addressed the screen. "This is Commander Olivia Blackwood of the Earth Defense Force. We are an independent species. We do not recognize your authority in our solar system." A sound like chiming crystal filled the room. Xylith was laughing. "Your species' independence is irrelevant. The Star Weaver is a weapon of mass destruction, created eons ago in the First Spiral War. Its very existence violates 17 different cosmic treaties." Russell stepped forward, ignoring Blackwood's warning glare. "That weapon was injured and needed help. Where I come from, that makes it a patient, not a fugitive." The alien's galaxy eyes fixed on Russell. "Ah, the meddler. You have no conception of what you've done, little organic. The Star Weaver is the last of its kind for a reason. They were too dangerous to be allowed to exist." The tactical display suddenly erupted with new alerts. Something massive was moving through Jupiter's atmosphere, followed by another, and another. Russell's heart nearly stopped as he recognized the familiar crystalline forms. More dragons. Dozens of them. Xylitha's composed expression cracked. "Impossible. We eliminated them all." Through the command center's windows, Russell watched in awe as the cosmic dragons emerged from their hiding place in Jupiter's storms. They must have been there for centuries, perhaps millennia, waiting for some signal. Their bodies shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist, their wings spanning distances that made the alien fleet look tiny in comparison. "Eliminated?" A new voice spoke, this one resonating directly in everyone's minds. The injured dragon that Russell had helped appeared among its kin, its wounds now fully healed. "You tried, Executor. You failed. And now, thanks to one human's compassion, we have proof of your crimes." Blackwood grabbed Russell's arm. "What crimes? What's really going on here?" The dragon's mental voice carried notes of ancient sorrow. The crystalline concordat didn't hunt us because we were weapons. They hunted us because we were witnesses. We saw them seed primitive worlds with life, then harvest entire civilizations once they reached technological maturity. Humanity was to be their next harvest. Xylitha's image flickered with rage. You dare? We are the guardians of order. We decide which species are worthy of existence. Not anymore, Russell said, understanding flooding through him. Those wounds I treated, they weren't from weapons. They were from data storage crystals. You weren't just a refugee, he addressed the dragon, you were carrying evidence. Evidence I accidentally helped decrypt when I used my medical synthesizer on you. The dragon's mental laugh shook the station. Indeed, Healer Russell. Your medical technology was the key we needed to unlock our archived memories. Memories we can now broadcast to every sentient species in the galaxy. The command center screens filled with images, countless civilizations rising and falling, all orchestrated by the crystalline concordat. Worlds stripped of life, species erased from existence, all to fuel the concordat's twisted vision of cosmic order. Xylitha's image began to fade. This isn't over. The concordat will not fall to the lies of monsters and primitives. No, Commander Blackwood said, her voice steel. It will fall to the truth. And we primitives are very good at spreading information. She turned to her communications officer. Broadcast everything. Every frequency, every channel. Let the galaxy see what we've seen. The alien fleet began to retreat, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos as the dragon spread out among them, herding them away from Earth's solar system. The injured dragon, the one that had started it all, remained behind, hovering outside the command center's window. Your help was not coincidence, James Russell, it communicated. We chose this world to make our stand because we saw in humanity something rare, the capacity to help even those you don't understand. The willingness to heal rather than harm. Russell watched the last of the alien ships vanish into FTL. So what happens now? The dragon's purple eyes sparkled. Now we teach you about the stars. All of them. Without the concordat's filters and restrictions. There are wonders out there that even we haven't fully explored. Commander Blackwood sighed, already imagining the paperwork this would generate. I don't suppose you'd be willing to start with something small? Maybe explain how you've been hiding in Jupiter all this time? The dragon's answer felt like a smile in their minds. Actually, Commander, that's quite an interesting story. It begins with another human, about 300 years ago, who also couldn't ignore someone in need of help. Lieutenant Marcus Torres stood at the observation deck of the newly commissioned Starship Horizons, watching Jupiter's swirling storms with a mix of awe and disbelief. 3 months had passed since Private Russell's encounter with the cosmic dragon, and humanity's place in the galaxy had transformed dramatically. Still trying to wrap your head around it? Russell asked, joining him at the window. The former medic now wore the insignia of Earth's Dragon Liaison Division, a position that hadn't existed until recently. How did we miss them? Torres gestured at the massive forms weaving through Jupiter's atmosphere. Dozens of crystal dragons, living in our own solar system for centuries. Our sensors should have detected something. The same way we miss what we're not ready to see, a new voice echoed in their minds. The dragon they'd come to know as Luminaris emerged from a nearby storm band, its crystalline form refracting Jovian light in impossible patterns. Your species needed to evolve naturally, without interference. We simply waited and watched. Torres checked his data tablet, still adjusting to casual conversation with a being older than human civilization. The historical analysis team found something interesting in the archives. References to strange lights in Jupiter's atmosphere dating back to 1718. That was you, wasn't it? Luminaris's mental voice carried a note of fond remembrance. Ah, yes. Captain Elizabeth Drake. She was the first human to see us clearly, though history recorded her account as a fever dream. She helped one of our younglings who had strayed too close to Europa's ice sheets. That's twice humans have helped dragons in need, Russell noted. I'm sensing a pattern. The dragon's crystalline form shifted, creating patterns that seem to tell stories in light. Your species has a remarkable capacity for empathy. It's why we chose Earth to protect, all those millennia ago. We recognized something in your primitive ancestors, a spark that the crystalline concordat would have extinguished. A distant alarm chimed, and Torres checked his communications panel. Speaking of the concordat, we're getting reports from the outer ring colonies. More refugee ships arriving, species we've never encountered before. They're all saying the same thing, the concordat's control is crumbling. Luminaris's wings flexed, sending ripples through Jupiter's clouds. The truth we revealed has shattered their empire of lies. But be warned, cornered predators are often at their most dangerous. As if summoned by those words, the ship's emergency alerts began blaring. Commander Blackwood's voice came over the intercom, all hands to stations. We've got multiple quantum ruptures forming in the Kuiper belt. Torres and Russell rushed to the bridge, arriving just as Blackwood was studying a holographic display of the solar system. The commander's expression was grim as she pointed to dozens of red dots appearing at the system's edge. The concordat's not retreating, she said. They're bringing in their entire remaining fleet. Looks like they've decided if they're going down, they're taking Earth with them. Luminaris's mental voice reached everyone on the bridge. They seek to prove their superiority one final time. By destroying the species that helped expose their crimes, they believe they can restore their authority. How many ships? Russell asked, already calculating medical supply requirements. Over 3,000, Torres reported, his tactical display struggling to track them all. Including something massive at the fleet center. It's bigger than Jupiter. The massive object emerged from its quantum rupture, and collective gasps filled the bridge. It wasn't a ship, it was a mechanical construct in the shape of a dragon, its surface covered in the same crystalline technology as the Concordat's ships. The world render, Luminaris's mental voice carried ancient dread. They built it to mock us, using the crystalline essence of our fallen kin. We thought it was destroyed in the First Spiral War. Commander Blackwood's hands tightened on her command chair. Options? We've got maybe 6 hours before they reach Jupiter, Torres reported. Earth's defense fleet is mobilizing, but against something that size. Russell stepped forward, his medical training giving him a different perspective. Wait. You said they built it using the essence of fallen dragons? Could we? I don't know, wake them up somehow. Luminaris's presence brightened. Wake them? No, young healer. But perhaps. Perhaps we could free them. The dragon's mental voice expanded, reaching out to its kin throughout Jupiter's atmosphere. We will need your help. All of you. What are you planning? Blackwood asked. The same thing that allowed us to reveal the Concordat's crimes, Russell realized. My medical synthesizer, the one that decoded the dragon's data storage. But this time, on a massive scale. Torres studied his tactical displays. We'd need to get close enough to broadcast the medical decryption signal directly into the Worldrender's crystalline matrix. Right through the middle of the Concordat fleet. And we'd need enough power to affect something that large, Blackwood added. Where would we even get that kind of energy? Luminaris's answer came with a surge of determined purpose. From us. All of us. The dragons you see are merely our physical forms. Our true essence, the energy you humans might call our souls, can be focused, channeled. Particularly through crystals attuned to our frequency. Like the crystals in my medical synthesizer, Russell said. The ones that are now calibrated to your biology. Precisely. Luminaris's form began to glow brighter. We can create a channel, a beam of pure dragon essence, focused through your device. Not to decode information this time, but to awaken our lost kin trapped within the world render. Commander Blackwood stood, her decision made. Lieutenant Torres, plot us a course through that fleet. Private Russell, get to medical and start modifying every synthesizer we've got. We're going to need all the broadcast power we can muster. And us? Luminaris asked, though the dragon's tone suggested it already knew the answer. Blackwood's smile was fierce. Gather your kin, Luminaris. Show us how dragons really dance among the stars. As the Horizons' engines powered up and the dragons began moving into formation, Russell found himself remembering that rainy night on Europa. One act of kindness, one choice to help an injured being, had set all of this in motion. Now they just had to survive long enough to see how it ended. The Horizons cut through space like a blade, its hull thrumming with power never meant for human vessels. Around it, cosmic dragons flew in formation, their crystalline bodies creating a lattice of light that deflected incoming fire from the Concordat fleet. Inside the ship's medical bay, Private Russell worked frantically to modify the last of their medical synthesizers. Power output at 300% beyond safety limits, he reported through the ship's comm system. Any higher and they'll burn out before we reach the world render. They only need to last long enough for one shot. Commander Blackwood's voice came back, steady despite the chaos around them. Torres, status on our approach vector? Lieutenant Torres's hands danced across his tactical console, plotting their course through the massive enemy fleet. Threading the needle, Commander. The dragons are keeping the worst of their fire off us, but that thing's gravity well is already affecting our trajectory. The world render dominated the view screen, its artificial dragon form a mockery of the natural grace displayed by their allies. Its crystalline scales were dark, absorbing light rather than refracting it, and its eyes burned with cold machine intelligence. We've got incoming. Torres called out. Concordat boarding craft, dozen plus. They're trying to stop us from reaching optimal broadcast range. Blackwood's voice remained calm. Security teams to all critical sections. Russell, how long do you need to get that signal ready? 10 minutes, Russell answered, connecting another power cell to his modified synthesizer array. Maybe less if. The ship shuddered violently, and warning lights flooded the medical bay. Through the small observation window, Russell watched several Concordat ships disappear in balls of crystal flame as dragons tore through them. But for each ship they destroyed, 3 more took its place. We don't have 10 minutes, Torres reported. Their boarding craft are breaching the hull. Multiple decks. The medical bay doors sealed automatically as the sound of weapons fire echoed through the corridors. Russell checked his sidearm, standard issue, probably useless against Concordat combat units, and returned to his work. The synthesizer's power cores were already glowing dangerously hot. Luminaris, he called out mentally, hoping the dragon could still hear him through all the chaos. We need more time. The dragon's response came not in words but in action. The medical bay's window filled with crystalline light as Luminaris pressed its massive form against the ship's hull, extending its natural shielding around them. Other dragons followed suit, their bodies forming a living armor around the Horizons. Direct hit to engineering. Torres's voice crackled through static. We're losing power to the main drive. Commander Blackwood's response was immediate. Divert all remaining power to Russell's position. Everything we've got. Commander, Torres protested, that'll leave us dead in space. We're already dead if this doesn't work. Do it. The medical bay's lights flickered, then surged as the ship's entire power grid redirected to Russell's jerry-rigged array of synthesizers. The device's crystalline matrices began to sing, harmonizing with the dragons pressed against the hull. 5 minutes to optimal range, Torres reported. But we've got Concordat troops approaching the medical bay. Our security teams can't hold them much longer. Russell looked at his work, nearly complete, but not quite there. They needed more time, more power, more. The medical bay doors exploded inward. Through the smoke stepped figures that barely qualified as humanoid, their bodies more crystal than flesh. The Concordat's elite shock troops, armed with weapons that could shatter a dragon's scales. Step away from the device, their leader commanded in a voice like grinding glass. Your species' interference ends now. Russell raised his hands slowly, mind racing. Behind him, the synthesizer array hummed, almost ready. Almost. You know what I don't understand, he said, buying seconds. Why go to all this trouble? Why build that thing out there? The world render, it's not just a weapon, is it? It's a monument to your fear. The crystalline soldiers advanced, weapons charged. Their leaders' faceted eyes narrowed. We do not fear primitive organisms. No, Russell agreed. You fear what we might become. What all species might become if given the chance to grow naturally. That's why you harvest worlds, why you try to destroy the dragons. Because they saw the truth, you're not guardians. You're parasites, feeding off the potential of others. A blast of energy seared past his head, leaving a smoking hole in the wall. Enough, the leader snarled. You understand nothing. I understand more than you think, Russell said, and smiled. Because while he'd been talking, he'd also been counting. Counting the seconds as the ship's power fed into his modified synthesizers. Counting the harmonics building in the crystalline matrices. Counting the moments until the entire medical bay erupted in light. The dragons pressed against the hull had synchronized their essence with the synthesizers, creating a feedback loop that amplified the power far beyond what the devices could normally channel. The Concordat soldiers staggered, their crystalline forms resonating with the frequency. Now! Russell slammed the final activation sequence. The synthesizer array fired, producing a beam of pure dragon essence that shot through the hull, through the vacuum of space, straight toward the Worldrender's cold heart. The massive construct's eyes flickered as the beam struck it. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a crack appeared in its crystalline surface. Then another. And another. Light, real light, alive and ancient, began to pour from the fractures. The dragons trapped within its structure, used as batteries for centuries, were awakening. No, the Concordat leader whispered. No, no, no. The Worldrender's surface exploded outward as dozens, hundreds of dragons burst free, their combined roar shaking reality itself. They were different from Luminaris and the others, older, primal, their forms made of pure energy barely contained by physical matter. The freed dragons turned as one toward the Concordat fleet. Their eyes burned not with hatred, but with justice long delayed. The battle was about to change dramatically. Russell looked at the crystalline soldiers, who seemed suddenly much less imposing. I'd surrender if I were you. Something tells me your superiors are about to be very, very busy. Above them, the stars themselves seemed to bend as the ancient dragons began to move. The real war was just beginning. The horizons cut through space like a blade, its hull thrumming with power never meant for human vessels. Around it, cosmic dragons flew in formation, their crystalline bodies creating a lattice of light that deflected incoming fire from the Concordat fleet. Inside the ship's medical bay, Private Russell worked frantically to modify the last of their medical synthesizers. Power output at 300% beyond safety limits, he reported through the ship's comm system. Any higher and they'll burn out before we reach the world render. They only need to last long enough for one shot, Commander Blackwood's voice came back, steady despite the chaos around them. Torres, status on our approach vector? Lieutenant Torres's hands danced across his tactical console, plotting their course through the massive enemy fleet. threading the needle, Commander. The dragons are keeping the worst of their fire off us, but that thing's gravity well is already affecting our trajectory. The world render dominated the view screen, its artificial dragon form a mockery of the natural grace displayed by their allies. Its crystalline scales were dark, absorbing light rather than refracting it, and its eyes burned with cold machine intelligence. "We've got incoming," Torres called out. "Concordat boarding craft, dozen plus. They're trying to stop us from reaching optimal broadcast range." Blackwood's voice remained calm. "Security teams to all critical sections. Russell, how long do you need to get that signal ready?" 10 minutes, Russell answered, connecting another power cell to his modified synthesizer array. "Maybe less if." The ship shuddered violently, and warning lights flooded the medical bay. Through the small observation window, Russell watched several Concordat ships disappear in balls of crystal flame as dragons tore through them. But for each ship they destroyed, 3 more took its place. "We don't have 10 minutes, Torres reported. Their boarding craft are breaching the hull. Multiple decks." The medical bay doors sealed automatically as the sound of weapons fire echoed through the corridors. Russell checked his sidearm, standard issue, probably useless against Concordat combat units, and returned to his work. The synthesizer's power cores were already glowing dangerously hot. "Luminaris," he called out mentally, hoping the dragon could still hear him through all the chaos. "We need more time." The dragon's response came not in words but in action. The medical bay's window filled with crystalline light as Luminaris pressed its massive form against the ship's hull, extending its natural shielding around them. Other dragons followed suit, their bodies forming a living armor around the horizons.